This is what the narcissist secretly thinks about you now. After a long separation, you finally got away. Maybe you left them, maybe they left you, or maybe it was a slow fade, a silent goodbye that neither of you ever officially acknowledged. But one way or another, time has passed, weeks, months, maybe even years, and you thought you were free. But somewhere, deep inside their mind, you're still there, lingering, haunting. Not because they miss you, not because they love you, but because your absence disrupted something fundamental in their world: control. Because make no mistake, narcissists don't forget people who walk away from them. They may act like you never existed, pretend they've moved on effortlessly, or even smear your name to others, but behind closed doors, in the quiet corners of their mind, you are still present. And what they think about you now, what they secretly obsess over, is far more revealing than anything they'll ever say out loud. In this video, we'll uncover the 10 things the narcissist secretly thinks about you after a long separation. Things that will shock you, things that will explain so much, and things that will finally help you understand why they can't seem to let go. We'll explore how they rewrite history in their heads, how they monitor your life from afar, how they envy your strength, and how they still try to manipulate you even when you're not around. If you've ever wondered whether a narcissist truly moves on, or if they secretly dwell on your presence long after you're gone, this video will give you clarity and peace of mind. So if you're ready to understand the inner world of a narcissist long after the relationship ends, keep watching. Because knowledge is power, and once you know what they can't forget, you can finally stop letting them live rent-free in your head. Let's begin. If you're here, it means you've either lived through the pain of being discarded by a narcissist, or you're trying to understand what happens after the relationship ends. Either way, you're not alone. Millions of people struggle with the emotional aftermath of narcissistic relationships, and many of them don't realize that the abuse doesn't always end when the person leaves. Before we dive into the heart of this topic, let's take a moment to connect. If you found this content helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this video with others who might benefit from it. Awareness is the first step toward healing, and by spreading the word, you're helping others break free from cycles of emotional manipulation and control. Now let's start with the very first thing the narcissist secretly thinks about you now. You represent something they lost, but not love, not connection, not even you. What they lost was control. Narcissists thrive on dominance. Their entire identity is built around the idea that they are superior, admired, and needed. So when someone walks away, especially someone strong, independent, or emotionally grounded, it shakes the foundation of their reality. That's why, even though they may claim to have moved on, they still think about you constantly. Not because they care about your well-being, but because your departure challenged their sense of power. You were someone they believed they could manipulate indefinitely, and suddenly you weren't. And that stings deeply. Second, they replay every interaction with you in their mind, not to reflect but to rewrite history in their favor. Have you ever noticed how narcissists rarely admit fault? Even years later, they won't say, "I was wrong." Instead, they go over every conversation, every argument, every moment of conflict in their heads, twisting events so that they come out looking justified, misunderstood, or even victimized. This mental replay isn't about seeking truth. It's about maintaining their self-image. Every time they think about you, they're reinforcing the narrative that paints them in the best possible light. You weren't hurt. You were too sensitive. You didn't walk away. You abandoned them. You weren't strong. You were cold and unfeeling. By rewriting the past, they protect their ego. And as long as they can convince themselves that they were right and you were wrong, they can sleep at night. Third, they monitor your life from a distance, even if you've cut contact completely. It's not uncommon for narcissists to check your social media, ask mutual friends about you, or even show up unexpectedly after months or years of silence. They want to know how you're doing, not because they care, but because they need to measure their own worth against yours. If you're thriving, they feel threatened. If you're struggling, they feel vindicated. If you found happiness without them, They feel rage, because your success without them proves something they can't afford to believe, that you didn't need them after all. This obsession with comparison is rooted in deep insecurity. Narcissists define themselves by how they stack up against others, and if you were someone important to them, even briefly, they can't resist checking in to see where you stand. Fourth, they envy your independence and strength more than they'll ever admit. Despite everything they said while you were together, despite the insults, the gaslighting, the attempts to make you feel small, they actually envied you, not for your looks or your success, but for your ability to stand on your own 2 feet. Narcissists are emotionally fragile beings. They rely on external validation to feel whole. But you had something real. You had resilience. You had boundaries. You had the ability to walk away and rebuild your life without falling apart. That terrified them. Because no matter how much they tried to diminish you, they knew the truth. You were stronger than they would ever be. And that's a truth they can't face directly, so instead, they bury it under layers of contempt, denial, and projection. Fifth, they miss the attention, not the person. One of the biggest myths about narcissism is that they can't feel attachment. That's not entirely true. What they can't feel is healthy attachment. They don't miss you for who you are. They miss the role you played in their life. You were a source of admiration, a listener, a supporter, a challenger, a mirror, and once you're gone, they feel the void, not because they loved you, but because they relied on you to fuel their ego. Some narcissists even try to hoover you back in, reaching out with fake apologies, grand gestures, or sudden declarations of missed love, but it's not about reconnecting, it's about reclaiming what they lost. Sixth, they blame you for their failures, even the ones you had nothing to do with. Narcissists don't take responsibility, ever. So if things aren't going well in their lives, whether it's professionally, romantically, or financially, they look for someone to blame. And guess who often ends up taking the fall? You. Even if you haven't spoken in years, they'll tell themselves that everything went downhill after you left, that you ruined their chances, that you took something from them, that you made them feel unstable. Of course, this is projection at its finest. They refuse to acknowledge their own flaws, so they dump the weight of their failures onto you, and that keeps you alive in their minds, not as a person, but as an excuse. Seventh, they relive moments of conflict, not to heal, but to justify their behavior. Unlike healthy individuals who reflect on past conflicts to grow and improve, narcissists revisit old arguments to reinforce their belief that they were right. Every fight, every accusation, every painful moment becomes another piece of evidence in their internal court case. They replay your words, twist your intentions, and reinterpret your actions to fit their narrative. And each time they do, they convince themselves a little more that they were the real victim. It's not about closure, it's about confirmation. Confirmation that they were justified, that they were in control, that they were never the problem. Eighth, they fear that you've exposed them to others, even if you haven't. Narcissists live in constant fear of exposure. They spend their lives crafting an image, one of confidence, charm, and superiority. But deep down, they know it's all a facade. So when you leave, especially if you've spoken openly about your experience, they worry. They worry that others will start seeing them for who they really are, that people will question their behavior, that their carefully curated reputation will crumble. Even if you've stayed silent, they assume the worst. And that paranoia keeps you present in their minds far longer than you might expect. Ninth, they sometimes idealize you again, briefly before devaluing you once more. There's a deeply unsettling emotional cycle that many narcissists fall into after they lose someone significant, especially someone who once played an important role in their life. It's not a cycle of healing or growth, but one of fixation, distortion, and internal conflict that can last far longer than you might expect. It usually starts with the discard, the moment when they decide you're no longer serving their needs. Whether it was sudden or gradual, whether they left you or made you feel like leaving was your only option, the message was clear: you were being cast aside. And in that moment, they convinced themselves that you weren't important anymore, that you had flaws, that they were better off without you. But time doesn't heal their wounds the way it does for most people. Instead, it gives them space to reflect, not on their actions, not on their mistakes, but on what they lost. Not love, not connection, not even you as a person, but the emotional fuel you provided, the admiration, the attention, the sense of control they once felt when they had you close. So, after some time has passed, sometimes days, sometimes months, sometimes even years, they begin to idealize you again. Suddenly, they remember only the good parts. They recall how exciting you were, how much validation you gave them, how much power they felt when they were in charge of your emotions. And in those moments, they almost miss you, not because they care about you as a person, but because they miss what you represented, a source of emotional supply that they could count on. This phase of re-idealization often catches people by surprise, especially if you've been on the receiving end of strange messages, unexpected attempts at contact, or subtle efforts to pull you back in. But it's not genuine affection. It's nostalgia wrapped in ego, a longing not for you but for the way you made them feel when they still had influence over you. However, this brief return to admiration doesn't last long. Sooner or later, reality sets in again, the painful realization that you are truly gone, that you won't come running when they call, that your absence is permanent. And with that realization comes a sharp emotional crash. They can't accept that they've lost someone who once gave them attention, so they protect themselves the only way they know how, by devaluing you all over again. This time, it's not done to your face, it's internal. They talk themselves out of missing you by convincing themselves that you were never really that special, that you had too many flaws, that you didn't meet their expectations, that they're better off without you. And just like that, you go from being the lost treasure they briefly mourned to the disappointment they're relieved to be rid of. This emotional yo-yo, the constant shift between remembering you fondly and rewriting you as the problem, is exhausting for them, even if they won't admit it. And for anyone close enough to witness it, it can be equally frustrating to observe, because no matter how many times they go back and forth in their minds, the outcome remains the same. You are either an object of admiration or a target of resentment. There is rarely any middle ground. And perhaps the most painful part is realizing that none of it has anything to do with who you really are. It's all about their need to maintain control. Even in memory, even when you're gone, they still try to shape your image in a way that serves their ego, whether that means turning you into a lost treasure or a cautionary tale. That's why this pattern continues long after you've disappeared from their lives. Because for a narcissist, letting go isn't about moving forward. It's about maintaining the illusion that they were always in charge. And until they can fully rewrite the story in their favor, they'll keep cycling through these phases of idealization and devaluation like a broken record. It's not about you. It's about their need to feel powerful, even in the face of loss. 10th, they remember how you made them feel, but only the parts that serve their ego. At the end of the day, narcissists don't remember people for who they truly were or for the depth of the connection they shared. That kind of emotional memory doesn't exist for them in any meaningful way. Instead, they remember others based on how those people made them feel, specifically, how they contributed to their sense of power, admiration, or control. If you were someone who made them feel powerful, if your presence gave them attention, validation, or a sense of superiority, they will hold on to that version of you like it's a trophy. They'll replay those moments over and over in their minds, not because they miss you as a person, but because those memories serve their ego. They reinforce the image they want to maintain of themselves, admired, respected, and in charge. But if you were someone who challenged them, who stood up for yourself, resisted their manipulation, or forced them to face parts of themselves they didn't want to see, those memories get treated very differently. In fact, they often get erased completely, or twisted into something unrecognizable. In their version of events, you weren't protecting yourself. You were difficult. You weren't setting boundaries. You were trying to hurt them. You weren't exposing their flaws. You were betraying them. That's just how narcissists operate. For them, memory isn't about truth, it's about survival. It's about maintaining the illusion that they are always in control, always justified, and never wrong. And if remembering the real truth threatens that illusion, they will rewrite the story until it fits their needs. So if you've ever wondered why they seem to remember only the good times, or worse, why they paint you as the villain when you know what really happened, now you understand. It has nothing to do with reality and everything to do with how they need to see the world in order to keep functioning the way they do. And if you've recognized any of these patterns in your own experience, take a deep breath and remind yourself of this one unshakable truth: you are not alone. You were never chosen by the narcissist in your life because you were weak or vulnerable. You were chosen because you had something real, something valuable, something they needed. Whether it was your strength, your empathy, your resilience, or your ability to see through deception, you brought something into their world that they deeply needed, even if they never acknowledged it. And now, after everything, you have the chance to reclaim that strength and use it for yourself, not for them, not for anyone else, but for your own healing and growth. The lessons you've learned, the boundaries you've built, and the awareness you've gained are not things to be discarded or forgotten. They are tools, powerful ones, that can help you move forward with clarity, confidence, and a deeper understanding of who you truly are. Healing from narcissistic abuse doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means facing it with honesty and courage. It means understanding that none of it was your fault, that their behavior was never about you, and that your worth was never tied to their approval or validation. You are not broken. You are not damaged. You are simply human, recovering from an experience that left deep wounds because it was designed. Narcissistic abuse is not something people walk away from unscathed, and anyone who tells you otherwise has never lived through it. You carry scars, yes, but those scars are not weaknesses. They are signs of survival, proof that you faced something dark and came out the other side. And while the pain may never fully disappear, it will change shape over time. It will stop defining you and start reminding you of how far you've come. So if you've recognized any of these truths in your own life, in your own story, know this: you are not alone. You were never chosen because you were weak. You were chosen because you had something real, something valuable, something they need. Whether it was your empathy, your strength, your stability, or your love, you brought something into their world that they could never create for themselves. But now, you have the chance to take that strength and use it for yourself, for your healing, for your growth, and for the life you deserve to live. A life free from manipulation, free from control, and free from the need to justify your worth to anyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this message meaningful or helpful, please consider taking just a few seconds to like, subscribe, and share this content with others who may be going through something similar. Awareness is the first step toward healing, and by spreading the word, you're helping others break free from cycles of emotional abuse and manipulation. Once again, I want to remind you to stay strong, stay aware, and most importantly, remember this truth: you are not alone. There is an entire community of people who understand what you've been through, who have walked this path before you, and who are rooting for your healing and growth. Keep moving forward, trust your instincts, and never forget that your strength is real, and it belongs to you now, fully and completely.